Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another riveting presentation by myself, the IVNIT, Joe Proy IV. Today, I am going to do a simulated security assessment on a company that I made up in order to not get sued or offend any real companies. I will go through it. I will basically set the stage, tell you about the company, what they do, what line of work they're in. We will observe some of the shortfalls of the company, and then we will talk about how to fix them. Agenda, as I essentially just did. So we will go through the made up company, of course, again, made up, talk about the details and the problems, some of the solutions, and the key takeaways. Quickly, biography. So I cover all of this with every presentation that I do, as I will say with every presentation that I do as well. This is not an intention to tell you that everything that I say is right. Everything that I say today is an opinion of one of the ways that things can be done, and there are many other ways that the same goals can be achieved, and some of them are better than others in different situations. By no means do I have all the answers. This is simply a request that you listen to what I have to say and come to your own conclusions. For those of you who have not seen any of my presentations before and you're hearing one now, the notes on PowerPoint skills, my presentations are very basic. That is not something that I intend to change. If you like a lot of pretty pictures and charts and diagrams, I apologize. You will probably be disappointed by what you see in this PowerPoint. Um, but hopefully the lack of prettiness and fanciness will be made up for by the information that I provide to you and my fantastic commentary on it. So, we are going to talk about this made up company. The company is going to be called Periodically Reliable Transit. As you can see, it is a Pittsburgh-based transportation company serving the metropolitan area and surrounding areas of Allegheny County. So essentially, that is the city of Pittsburgh and the areas surrounding it for those of you who are not local. It is both light rail, so a streetcar if you want to call it, or a trolley if you want to call it, kind of like a subway, but mostly above ground. Um, and also it does have some bus service. For today's presentation, we're going to talk about the light rail service primarily because there are a couple more nuances and a couple more technological bases that can be asserted from that. The light rail service only serves a small area. It is by no means a ubiquitous system. Essentially, it only serves a very select area of the region. It is a government managed entity with primarily being run by both local and state level legislature. That will be something that we will cover as important because it is stifling to competition and it does not necessarily push for them to address a lot of the circumstances that we're going to cover today. Because they do have an exclusive deal in place to provide transportation here in the county of Allegheny County, as well as the city of Pittsburgh. A couple of unofficial slogans, not necessarily legitimate, but important. We can probably get you almost close to where you want to go, sort of, but we can't guarantee that tomorrow. Another one, we apologize for any inconvenience and appreciate your patience. That one is something that you hear after a lot of the messages that it would be. So on this light rail system, when you are standing at a station waiting for a train to come, you will hear announcements about construction, about delays, whatever it might be. That is the one that always comes after them. And finally, please allow additional travel time and expect delays. So we're going to cover communications a little bit more in depth later. But the reason that I bring this up now is that this seems a little bit redundant, if you will, because I don't necessarily need an explanation for why I should expect delays, and I also don't need to be told to expect delays if you're telling me to allow additional travel time. However, again, we're going to talk about poor communications and things like that later. This is just to set the stage on what kind of company we're dealing with. So, some of the details and some of the problems. Like I said, we're going to focus on the light rail aspect of this fictitious organization for this exercise. So, don't worry about the fact that they have bus service, even though they do. So under construction since 2023. So this light rail service, which only serves a small subset of the area, is also one that is constantly under some kind of construction. So we're not talking about the New York subway system here or something like they have in DC or San Francisco or even in Philadelphia. We are talking about a fairly small light rail system that should be one of the simplest systems can possibly be done. But there are constant service disruptions and announcements that you will hear on any given day, which is always kind of nice. Um, because it's always something that can really get your blood pressure up in the morning if you're feeling a little bit tired before work. It's always nice to hear all of the announcements about how delayed you are to get into your job. They do run two-car trains occasionally on this fictitious light rail system. However, not all of the train car doors open at all of the stops because of the way that the fare is done. Only certain stops have second car, and if you are on the second car and need one of those stops, then you have to ride to the next possible stop to where you can get off, and get off there, and then ride back to the stop you were trying to get off but couldn't. There are announcements to tell you about the fact that two-car trains only open at certain stops. However, the list of stops that they give you for when you must ride the first car, which grossly outweigh those that you need to ride the second car anyway, therefore giving you sort of the opposite of what they should give you. It would be much quicker and easier and more efficient to tell you which cars you have to get off, or you can get off on the second car. However, they don't do it that way because that's not what we're talking about. The speakers used to announce the stops and the routes inside and outside the cars. This would be great. It's a very accessible feature, allowing people with vision issues in order to know what stop that they're at. However, these might be surplus speakers left over from the World War II area. Either they do not work, which means you don't hear any announcements, or you can hear very poor quality. The same is actually true of the speakers that the drivers of these light rail cars use to communicate with the centralized traffic and other drivers. You often can hear a lot of static. You can often hear very mumbled and jumbled sort of text voice, if you will. And so, once again, communication, which might be key on something like this, a lot of logistics in play, um, is not so well. The other thing is that there are speakers inside and outside the car, as I mentioned. That is normally a great thing. However, in this case, because the driver actually has to manually switch the announcements from the inside to the outside of the car, you could be on the car and hear what route you are taking, which you should know because that's what you got on, and you might be off the car and hear what stop you're at, which you also should know because you're at that stop. And you might then miss the other part of that, which is the important part to you. So if you're on the car, you want to hear what stop you're at so that you know if you're getting off here or not. And if you're off the car, you might want to hear which route you're on so that you know if that's the train you want to take or if you need to wait for the next one. And we'll get into why that's important here a little bit. A couple other things. So there are safety systems in place, as there should be. Fantastic. However, when safety systems do not work, which is the majority of the time, they can be more problematic than not. So you might just be riding down the tracks, no problems, no problems, and all of a sudden, the light rail safety systems think either, hey, we're too close to another light rail vehicle, or we're going too fast. How it will solve this problem is it will immediately slam on the brakes, requiring a reboot of the system. All of that is fantastic because if there are people that are standing on the light rail vehicles, which could be required or necessary during high travel points, so going to and from work, or if there is some kind of a major event within the city, um, it would then kind of give you a nice little jolt. So don't be standing too comfortably and not paying attention because there is in all probability going to be an opportunity where you are going to have to brace yourself and make sure that you don't go like a bowling ball into the people in front of you. The other thing is that the doors on the side of the car could also be opened the opposite side. So if the platform is on the right-hand side of the car, it is possible by accident that the driver could open the doors on the left-hand side. Somebody not paying attention, and if they walk out too quickly, could end up walking out these doors and falling a good, oh, I would say 6 feet into the rocks and whatever is below, and possibly getting very hurt. There are also number of block points. So what can happen here is if there is a broken down rail car, other rail cars cannot get through certain pinch points and choke points, and therefore because of that, they are unable to get around, and it backs up all of the light rail service regardless of whether or not your route. So essentially, some of the routes kind of overlap each other. There might be other routes that go in different directions, but if there is a disruption on one of these common points, it would disrupt additional routes besides that one. And even if it is only on one of the routes, it can still cause a significant backup. There is some infrastructure problems, so the platforms, the elevators, and the escalators, which is great, except that platform work takes place pretty sporadically. So occasionally you might show up one day and there is a bit of a maze of caution tape and things like that because they're doing some painting. The next day you show up, it might be a completely different maze. Not exactly accessibility friendly for our blind friends who can't hear what stop they're getting off at. Um, the additional part is you then have to sometimes board on the opposite side, or only on the front car, or only elsewhere, wherever they happen to tell you. And like I said, it's an ever changing maze of caution tape. It's something that is not very ideal. They do have elevators and escalators, which are also fantastic for people who are either in wheelchairs or cannot walk up the steps very well. The problem with them is that they are often offline, sometimes for months and months at a time, and once again, they will tell you that these things are not operational. They will apologize for the inconvenience, and they do appreciate your patience. However, after a while, it starts to feel a little bit disingenuous because if a particular elevator has been out of service for 4, 5, 6 months, it starts to feel a little bit like those appreciations of patience are just slightly disingenuous. So, on the front, back, and side of each rail car, they will tell you the route and the destination. So let's say the lines are color coded. We'll just say they are blue and red. It might say blue line and it will say where it's going, and it might say red line and it will say where it's going. Or silver. Let's go ahead and add a third one just for fun. And say that the blue, red, and silver have different points where they are the same route and different points where they are different routes, specifically where they end. Um, that's working great. The signs, they're pretty wide, but let's say they're maybe about 3, 3.5 inches tall. Occasionally what they will do is they will have the blue line taking up the entirety of the sign, which is great if that's what you're looking for. However, then it will switch over and tell you the destination. As I mentioned before, multiple colors could end up at the same destination, which means you don't know if it is a blue or a red or a silver. Or, in some cases, it might just have the name of the transit system. So it might just say periodically reliable transit, in which case you have no idea what car you're getting on. You might know where it's going, but you may not know if it's the most efficient way to get there, or if you're going to be sitting through a bunch of stops and wishing that you had not bothered to get out of bed today. And once again, you might hear an audible announcement, but as we already covered, those speakers aren't working so well, so you shouldn't rely on that either. So, now that I've told you about this company and its problems, let's talk about some of the ways we can fix this. So, first, for physical security. Now we're talking about ingress and egress points, and we are talking about the most efficient way to allow riders to embark or disembark from these cars. So, if you allowed for riders to pay on car for the stops, then they could board two-car trains at any stop, and you wouldn't have to worry about whether or not your stop has a two-car train, which can become whether or not your stop has a fare booth, and therefore the stop opens second doors. Then you wouldn't have to worry about whether or not you can get on the second car or whether or not you would be trapped on it until another stop. Additionally, to do this, you would have the platforms configured such that you would have to pay your fare before you could even get on the platform. So rather than being able to stand on the platform and wait for a train to come, you would pay your fare. There would be some kind of a turnstile or other apparatus similar to when you swipe your badge to get in the building. It would then let you on the platform, and then you would wait for the car. And when the driver showed up, they would know that everybody paid, or unless you live in New York City, then most people just jumped over it. But regardless, I digress. Patch management. Making sure that things are working the way that they are supposed to work. So if you install an update to the computer systems that work on the light rail service, whether it be for the safety systems, whether it be for the announcements of the stops, whatever it might be, testing these things and making sure that they are working appropriately rather than beta testing them en route would be something that I think a lot of the riders would appreciate. I know I certainly would if I actually used this company, which again is very made up and fictitious. Business continuity. Define and implement a contingency plan. If you have a broken down or malfunctioning car, there needs to be a way to get around it. Now, there are certain points where it can switch from the inbound to the outbound track so that it can get around, but if there is a point where it cannot do that, there needs to be some sort of a backup system to in order that things are functioning properly. Or if a car breaks down and must be taken out of service, rather than having everybody wait for the next one and then creating a very significant backup and crowd, as well as significant delays, then there should be the possibility to pivot and be able to switch different things out, making sure that everything runs smoothly. Automation. As I mentioned before, having the manual switch between the inside and the outside speakers is very inefficient and oftentimes does not function properly. And having it be automated that the route would be on the outside and that the stop would be on the inside, for example, would make it a lot easier. And then the driver wouldn't have to switch it and you wouldn't have the risk of missing important information. Plain change management and both of the software and the infrastructure. So, um, everybody shows up on a given morning and they are getting ready to ride the train. That should not be the first thing that they find out, is that there has been some sporadic change to the infrastructure for that day, even if it's something simple like painting the platforms. Um, they should not find out about it the night before. Something like that, which has been planned out in theory, should be something that should be able to make aware of at least a week in advance. That way, if people are on vacation, if there's holidays, whatever there might be, everybody can be aware of these things. The other part of that is to ensure that the software is working properly. For example, if it would announce what stop you are at, you would hope that it would announce the right stop, but on occasion maybe it does not. In which case, for people who rely on those announcements, they may get off at the wrong stop, or they may at least be able to not rely on that information anymore and risk that they would potentially miss their stop or just feel a little bit of anxiety about that. In addition, nobody wants to see the operating system information or some random math equation because of a broken programming line of code on the side of the streetcar. They are looking for what route it is so that they know that information. And so again, proper testing of these things before putting them into production would be appreciated and is something that everyone should do. Continuing on the automation route a little bit, we did kind of cover some of this, but the doors that open as well, making sure that the right doors are opening so that somebody doesn't go walking off of the streetcar and fall and break their ankle or their leg or hurt their back or anything else. Um, plain Plan change management. Define a plan. Come up with when you're going to replace things and make sure that it's adhered to. And make sure that you're checking in on these things just as you would with a security project or any technology project. Make sure that you are aware of what the timeline is, what the milestones are, have stage gates in place so that people will sign off on those things so that the project stays on track and finishes when it's expected to with the least amount of disruption to your business, in this case, the riders of the light rail system. In addition, make sure that you are doing routine and preemptive and proactive maintenance on certain components, such as your elevators and your escalators, so that they are not broken down and that you're not waiting on parts for months on end, or that you don't have to simply tell everyone that they are unavailable for use for months on end and apologize for your patience and appreciate your inconvenience. But in reality, again, it comes across as disingenuous. Preventive maintenance on things like the escalators and elevators. Also, identify and address problems with the safety systems. Make sure that the safety systems are functioning properly. We certainly want them into place so that we don't have a high speed or a medium speed collision between these light rail cars, or that there are not some other potential issues with them. But they should be working properly, and they should not certainly be causing the brakes to lock up on a car, forcing the system to reboot every 5 feet on a particular section of track because there's simply a problem with how the system is functioning. Um, Same with the speakers. Make sure that the speakers are working both in both cars so that if the driver must make an announcement or if there is an automated announcement of importance, everyone can hear that on the front car and the back car. Everyone can hear what stop they're getting on and off at. Everyone can hear what route the train is going to run when they're standing on the platform on the outside. And it's not just a matter of guessing and hoping. Couple takeaways. So, first things first, make sure that you do have your proactive planning in place. Anytime you're going to do any kind of a project, making the plan in the first place and then executing it is often going to make sure that the project is much more efficiently done, that it completes on time, that it completes within budget, and so on and so forth. I often tell people measure twice, cut once, meaning the more planning you do up front to make sure that everything is in order, the less likely it is that something will come up halfway through the project. If you don't take account, for example, on the topic of a security measure that needs to be in place, just before you go to production, you realize this, you may have to do a lot of rework and there may be a lot of additional testing that has to take place, delaying your project by a significant amount, which means that you're not going to meet your customers' expectations. You're probably going to spend more money than you planned, and you're certainly going to take more time than you planned. Um, Make sure that your infrastructure or technology is only good when it works as it's planned. So as we mentioned, these malfunctioning safety systems, for example, not a great thing. It's only important if these systems are actually working. You cannot put a firewall in place and then never update the firewall rules. You cannot install anti-spyware or anti-malware and then never update the definitions, as an example. It's just as important then to proactively and do routine maintenance to make sure that all of your infrastructure is functioning the way it's intended to. Get rid of single point of failure. As I mentioned, there are areas where if a train breaks down on the tracks, nothing can get around it and everything is backed up. In this case, making sure that you don't have any such single point of failures in your own projects and in your own security projects or technology projects can make sure that all of these things don't happen. The last thing you want is for there to be one particular thing that, if it breaks down, takes the entire application offline, takes the entire system down. Now it's going to cost you money. It's going to cause you poor reputational damage with your client base. It certainly is not something that you want. Last but not least, as I mentioned, this is a fictitious company. Let's all be glad they're not real. Certainly, if a company like this existed, you would hope that they would be out of business. Unfortunately, as we saw before, as a government run company, that's never going to be the case. Also, certainly, if they have unions in place, it's even less likely to be the case because, yay, unions, um, collective bargaining, making everything more expensive and less efficient for us all. Um, a whole nother topic that I will cover at another time, probably not in one of these presentations, and so I digress. Um, so, as I mentioned, my name is Joe Proy. The QR code on the right can bring you to my LinkedIn profile if you would like to connect, converse, discuss, all of that kind of stuff. I am certainly happy to do so. I am very passionate about security and technology and could talk about it for hours. I know I kind of glossed over a lot of things in this presentation. I wanted to try and keep it somewhat short, but um, I certainly have a strong passion for things like process improvement and efficiency and all those kind of things. And so, like I said, I wanted to take an example of looking at what could be a real world company, even if I had to make one up, and make sure that people understood that the reality of those situations apply to a bunch of other situations as well. Certainly, as we're talking about things like technology, protecting our hardware and software, keeping things out of end of life and under warranty, getting routine maintenance done on them and proactive maintenance as well as security protection like patches and configuration changes, and all of these things sort of work together in a great ecosystem, either to make sure that everything is working appropriately, or if not done properly, can potentially run the risk of having everything not work appropriately. Thank you very much.